Nature publishes a second paper on an ancient Greek mystery, the Antikythera mechanism. This promises to revolutionize our understanding of the history of technology and astronomy, and it even tells us about the timetable for the earliest Olympic Games.
The Antikythera mechanism would be remarkable even if it was a less clever thing than it is, because there is so little like it physically preserved or even described in ancient books.
If it hadn't been discovered when it was in 1901, no one would possibly believe that it could exist because it's so sophisticated. It is, in a sense, you could describe it as being the technological side of the Greek miracle that created so much of our Western civilization. A friend of mine, Mike Edmonds, came to me one day. He's professor of astronomy at Cardiff University. And he said, "Have you ever heard of the Antikythera mechanism?" Well, I said, "No, I hadn't. You know, what is it?" And he told me this extraordinary story.
In 1900, just off the coast of the small island of Antikythera, a group of sponge divers came across the remains of an ancient wreck.
The first diver to come to the surface said he'd found a heap of dead, naked people underwater. The second diver came up with a larger-than-life bronze arm. And what they'd in fact discovered was the wreck of a Roman merchant vessel stuffed full of Greek treasure. And all this treasure was taken to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, including a small lump just over 30 centimeters high, completely disregarded at the time. It lay in the museum for some months, according to accounts, and then it split apart. And when it split apart, a curator noticed the remnants of some small precision gear wheels. After the first half-century of research, which led to some insights, but generally a lot of confusion, a British physicist in the mid-1950s started to study the mechanism. He was called Derek de Solla Price.
Price was the first to study X-rays of some of the fragments made by Charalambos Karakalos.
From these X-rays, Price developed a model of how the mechanism worked. It incorporated one feature, an ancient cycle of the sun and moon called the metonic cycle, which was absolutely critical to later understanding. It's one of the basic keys for understanding how the mechanism works. He also identified in the mechanism some epicyclic gearing, that is to say, gears that move with their axes moving on other gears. A completely astonishing revelation for ancient Greece.
Now the very latest techniques have been used to explore the mystery device.
In the autumn of 2005, a team from Hewlett-Packard, led by Tom Maltzbender, came with a special mechanism for looking at the surfaces of all the fragments.
With our method, we photograph a surface like this stone surface here with a fixed camera, but light sources at multiple positions. And from this, we can certainly interactively change lighting conditions of the object on the computer to bring out more detail. But more importantly, what we can do is we can change the reflectance properties, the material basically of the object itself. We can now transform into a very metallic look.
Beautiful. This is beautiful, isn't it? Very good. We wanted 3D X-ray information at high resolution also. And a world-leading company called X-Tech Systems came with a team led by Roger Hadland. They bought an 8-ton X-ray machine to Athens, so they produced brilliant data. We have absolutely extraordinary high-resolution data of all 82 fragments of the mechanism. And this has been really the basis of many of our revelations.
The Antikythera mechanism was the ancestor of a whole range of medieval instruments and clocks. Don Unwin, a master instrument maker, has already made replicas of many devices, including the 14th century Wallingford clock. His latest ambition is to make a working version of the Antikythera machine.
But all the gears, they're all squashed into quite a narrow, you know, like your Richard of Wallingford's clock. He left plenty of space between them, but in this...
Well, I thought I was surprised how little space it actually took up.
Once you get to the main body of it, you'll see the gears coming up in slices, because You know, we took an 8-ton X-ray machine to Athens to X-ray this tiny little thing, you know, and we did it in 3D so we could get the three-dimensional information out of the object.
This is
you know.
coming.
And you're just beginning to see now the crown being.
This was
You see
a
the
terrific
gears
advance. Was it not? From some of your earlier work. Oh, that's lovely.
So you can see the gears in layers. You can see exactly where they are and their relationship in 3 dimensions, which is what Price didn't have, of course.
Of course,
He couldn't see the 3-dimensional arrangement of the gears. That's the gear Price identified as 127 teeth, you know, for the Metonic cycle. This is 223 teeth for the
What's
Saros
left of it?
cycle,
Yeah.
and so on. And those are the gears. That's the little pin and slot that Michael Wright identified. But let me show you some.
Good.
This is a computer animation of the gears.
Lovely, isn't it?
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? It goes around very quickly, obviously, because otherwise you.
We've got the moon work on there.
Yes, that's the little moon phase indicator that Michael Wright identified. Beautiful device.
And here we've got it on the Wallingford clock. Very similar.
Very similar, but over 1400 years later.
In fact, you can see it. If you look at the back of fragment C, that's the little ball there.
Yes.
People had seen this for 100 years, and it took Michael Wright to resolve it. He said, that's what it is. And it's the sort of thing you think, yes, of course it is. You know?